The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Crestwood Community Gym, casting warm golden light across the polished maple floors. The faint squeak of sneakers echoed through the cavernous space, mingling with the steady rhythm of basketballs hitting the ground and the metallic clang of weights being racked. The air carried the scent of effort, faint traces of sweat, floor cleaner, and determination. At one end of the gym, a group of teens practiced their free throws. At the other, a few adults jogged lazily on the treadmills. Trainers shouted instructions in sharp bursts. It was the kind of place where everyone seemed to have a purpose, except for those who were there just to watch. That's when Jamal Carter stepped through the entrance. He was 16, tall for his age, with lean muscle from years of early morning practices. He wasn't the loud, attention-seeking type. Jamal moved with a quiet focus, carrying a slightly worn gym bag over his shoulder. His basketball shoes squeaked softly as he crossed the lobby toward the main court. He had a routine: warm-ups, drills, a little weight training, then shooting practice until his hands felt like they couldn't grip the ball anymore. Jamal came to the gym almost every day, even before school. He wasn't just playing for fun. He had dreams, goals bigger than this small suburban town. He wanted to play college ball, maybe even more, but as soon as he stepped inside, he felt it. The stare. Behind the front desk, leaning with an air of entitlement, was Linda Hastings. Everyone in Crestwood simply called her Karen. She was in her mid-40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair, oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and a voice sharp enough to cut through any room. She wasn't an employee. She was just a longtime member who believed her membership fees gave her the right to police everyone else's behavior. Karen's eyes locked on Jamal like a hawk spotting prey. She narrowed her gaze, her lips curling into a faint sneer. She watched as he walked calmly toward the lockers, passing a few adults who greeted him with casual nods. Karen tilted her head, muttering under her breath, "Of course, figures." Jamal didn't notice her at first. He was already slipping his bag off his shoulder, unzipping it to grab his basketball and a towel. He moved with a calm efficiency, the kind of presence that didn't demand attention but naturally commanded respect from those who actually knew him. But Karen couldn't let it go. She stepped away from the desk and strutted toward him, her sneakers making sharp, deliberate clicks on the polished floor. "Excuse me," she said loudly, loud enough for a few heads to turn. Jamal glanced up, puzzled. "Yes?" Karen folded her arms tightly. "I'm going to have to ask what you're doing here." Jamal blinked. "I'm working out, like everyone else." Her eyebrows arched as if she'd just been handed proof of her own suspicions. "This is a private facility. It's not open for loitering." She gestured vaguely toward him, her tone dripping with condescension. Jamal's calm expression didn't change, but he felt a familiar tightness in his chest. He'd seen this before, this exact look. "I have a membership," he said evenly. "I come here every morning." Karen scoffed. "Oh, really? And how exactly did you afford that?" Her voice cut through the gym like glass breaking. A couple of teens at the basketball court stopped dribbling. A man on the treadmill slowed down, glancing their way. Jamal straightened slightly. "I'm not sure why that's your business, ma'am. If you have a problem, you can ask the front desk." Karen took a step closer, invading his space. "I don't need to ask. I know who belongs here, and I don't think you do." Jamal's jaw tightened. He wasn't looking for a confrontation. He just wanted to practice. But Karen wasn't backing off. "Young man," she said sharply, "why don't you save us both the trouble and leave before I have to call security?" The gym fell silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Jamal exhaled slowly. He wanted to say something, anything, but before he could, Karen added one more dagger. "You people always think you can just wander into places you don't belong." And that was it. Something shifted in the air. For a moment, Jamal just stood there, his hand frozen on the zipper of his gym bag. Her words hit like a quiet punch, one he'd heard before in different forms, from different mouths, but it never failed to sting. The way she said "you people" carried decades of unspoken weight. Across the gym, a teenage boy holding a basketball hesitated, his eyes darting between Karen and Jamal. A man on the elliptical stopped pedaling entirely. They all knew what was happening, but no one moved. No one spoke. Silence can be loud, and in that moment, it was deafening. Jamal finally straightened up, his calm composure slipping into something sharper, controlled but edged with quiet defiance. He looked Karen in the eye. "Ma'am, I don't need your permission to be here. I have every right to use this gym. I paid for my membership just like you did. Karen let out a harsh laugh. Oh, spare me. Kids like you don't pay for things like this. You probably just walked in hoping no one would notice. Well, I noticed. She crossed her arms tighter, like she was the judge and jury of the entire building. Now either you leave right now or I'll call security and have you escorted out. Jamal resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Instead, he calmly reached into his bag and pulled out his membership card. He held it up, letting the fluorescent lights reflect off the barcode. Here, scan it yourself if you don't believe me. Karen didn't even look at it. Oh, I'm sure that's real, she said sarcastically. Maybe you borrowed it from someone who actually belongs here. I've been coming to this gym for years and I know who's allowed. Jamal's patience was wearing thin. He could feel the tension in his shoulders building, but he wasn't about to give her the reaction she clearly wanted. He kept his tone level. You're making a mistake. Why don't you just ask the front desk? They can confirm. Karen shook her head. No, you're the one making the mistake by thinking you can just stroll into a place like this and not be questioned. I don't care what kind of story you make up, I'm not letting you stay. Her voice grew louder, drawing more attention. Security! She called toward the desk, even though no one had moved yet. We've got an intruder! A couple of staff members glanced over uneasily. They knew Jamal. They'd seen him almost every morning for months, quietly practicing, never causing trouble. But Karen had a reputation for complaining about everything and causing scenes if she didn't get her way. Jamal clenched his jaw. He could feel eyes on him from every direction. Part of him wanted to just walk out and avoid the drama. But another part of him, the stronger part, refused to let her chase him away from a place he had every right to be. I'm not leaving, he said firmly. You don't own this gym. You can't just decide who belongs. Karen's face twisted with anger, like she couldn't believe he dared talk back. You know what? She snapped. Fine. If you won't leave, I'll make sure you do. Before Jamal could react, she stepped closer and shoved his gym bag off the bench with her foot. It hit the floor with a dull thud, spilling his neatly packed towel and water bottle. A few gasps echoed across the gym. Karen smirked, as if satisfied with the chaos she was causing. Now you're causing a disturbance, she announced loudly, addressing the staff. So either someone removes him, or I'll report this entire facility for negligence. Jamal stared at her, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He was trying, really trying, to stay calm. Just then, from across the room, a deep voice cut through the tension. What's going on here? Everyone turned. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a red security polo was walking toward them. But he wasn't the only one. Right behind him, the front doors swung open, and in stepped someone else. Someone who would change the entire dynamic of the room. A woman in a sleek black tracksuit, her posture commanding, her presence impossible to ignore. She moved with the quiet authority of someone used to taking charge, used to being respected wherever she went. Her eyes scanned the scene, sharp and focused, instantly landing on her son. Jamal? She said, her tone calm but heavy with unspoken meaning. What's happening here? Karen blinked, confused. And who are you? She demanded. Jamal exhaled, relief washing over his tense frame. Mom, he said softly. Karen's smirk faltered for the first time. Because standing in front of her wasn't just any mom. This was Coach Naomi Carter, Olympic gold medalist, world-renowned trainer, and one of the most respected names in American athletics. And she was not about to let this go. Karen's smug expression froze in place as Naomi Carter stepped fully into the gym. The automatic doors closed softly behind her, but the tension inside felt loud. Everyone who recognized her went silent. Even the teenagers shooting hoops stopped mid-dribble, their eyes widening. Naomi didn't need an introduction. She was the Naomi Carter, the former track and field Olympic gold medalist who had coached national champions and mentored rising stars. Her face had graced magazine covers. Her name was etched into history books. And here she was, standing in this suburban gym, eyes locked on the woman who had just humiliated her son. Karen, however, was still clueless. Excuse me, Naomi said calmly, her voice carrying a steady authority that made people instinctively straighten their posture. Why is my son's bag on the floor? Karen scoffed, as if Naomi's presence was just an inconvenience. Oh, so you're his mother. Well, maybe you should teach your child some manners. He doesn't belong here, and I was about to have him removed. You can't just let anyone wander into private facilities. Naomi's sharp eyes flicked to Jamal, then back to Karen. Private facilities? Jamal has a membership. He's been training here for months. Are you suggesting he doesn't belong because of what exactly? Karen waved her hand dismissively. Look, I don't care what story you've got. I've been coming here for years, and I know who's a legitimate member. He clearly isn't. Naomi's tone stayed calm, but there was a cool edge creeping in. You know? Or you assume. Did you check with the staff, scan his card, or did you just decide that a black teenager doesn't look like he belongs? Karen flinched slightly but tried to hold her ground. Don't make this about race, it's about the rules. He couldn't possibly afford… Enough! Naomi's voice was firm, final, like the crack of a starter pistol on the track. You don't know what my son can or cannot afford, and you have no right to question him. Not here, not anywhere. The security guard, who had been frozen near the weight racks, stepped forward cautiously. Ms. Carter, I know Jamal. He checks in every morning. He's never caused a problem. I think this is just a misunderstanding. Naomi turned her head slightly toward him. Is it? Because I see my son's belongings on the floor and a stranger shouting that he doesn't belong. Her gaze cut back to Karen. You humiliated him. For what? To make yourself feel important? Karen opened her mouth to respond, but Naomi didn't give her the chance. Do you have any idea who you're speaking to? Jamal is here because he's training for a national youth championship. He's one of the most disciplined young athletes I've ever met, and I should know, I've coached world champions. A murmur rippled through the gym. A few people whispered Naomi's name, realization dawning on their faces. Karen blinked, finally noticing the stares. Well, I didn't know. No, Naomi said, stepping closer, her presence towering over Karen's false bravado. You didn't want to know. You saw a black teenager in a gym you consider your territory, and you assumed he didn't belong. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Naomi knelt briefly, picking up Jamal's bag and handing it back to him gently. She looked him straight in the eye. You okay? Jamal nodded slowly, but his voice was quiet. Yeah, I'm fine. But Naomi saw the flicker of hurt behind his calm. She'd seen it before, in herself, in countless athletes who faced barriers beyond the track or court. She turned back to Karen, her voice lowering but somehow feeling even more powerful. You don't know me, but you should. I'm Naomi Carter, Olympic champion, national team coach, and more importantly, I'm a mother who will not let you treat my son like he's less than anyone here. Karen's face went pale. She stumbled over her words. I didn't realize. That's the problem, Naomi interrupted. You didn't think before you acted, and now everyone here sees it. Indeed, the entire gym had gone still. People had pulled out their phones. A few were quietly recording the scene, knowing this moment was more than just a petty argument. The gym manager, a young man named Tyler, hurried over from behind the desk. Ms. Carter, I'm so sorry about this. Jamal is one of our valued members. I assure you, this will be handled immediately. Karen turned sharply to him. Wait, you're taking her side? You were just harassing a teenager for existing, Tyler said flatly, and it stops now. Karen's jaw tightened. She looked around, but the sympathetic eyes she expected weren't there. Instead, she saw quiet disapproval. Even the teens she'd previously ignored were shaking their heads. Naomi placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, steady and protective. Come on, son. Let's not waste any more of our time here. We have real work to do. But as they turned to leave, Karen muttered under her breath, You people always play the victim card. Naomi stopped mid-step. She didn't turn around immediately. When she did, her eyes were like steel. Careful, she said softly, but her voice carried like a warning through the hushed gym. Because the only victim here is the one who will have to live with the fact that the entire world is about to see exactly who you are. Karen blinked, confused, and then she noticed dozens of phones recording her every move. Karen's face drained of color as her eyes darted around the room. She saw them now, phones angled from every direction, silent witnesses capturing the entire confrontation. A teenager near the basketball court lowered his phone slightly, but not before shaking his head in quiet disbelief. A middle-aged woman on a yoga mat was still recording, her expression tight with disapproval. Even the gym's own security camera above the reception desk had a clear view. For the first time since she stormed across the floor, Karen hesitated. Naomi didn't move closer. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to make Karen shift uncomfortably under the weight of the stares surrounding her. You want to call security? Naomi asked, her voice calm but sharper than any shout. Go ahead, call them. Let's see what they think when they watch the footage. Karen swallowed hard. Her mouth opened, but her words stumbled. I didn't mean for it to come across like that. I was just trying to protect the gym. You can't blame me for what? Naomi cut in. For profiling my son? For assuming he didn't belong before you even spoke to him? Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. The room felt heavy, filled with unspoken truths. Listen, I've been a member here for years, Karen began defensively. I know the people who come in. He's never been here when I'm here, so I had to make sure. You had to make sure of what exactly? Naomi asked, tilting her head slightly. Her tone was calm, but there was a cold precision to it. That a young black boy in gym clothes was suspicious? That his membership card must be fake? That his very presence needed to be questioned? Karen shifted her weight, glancing nervously toward the staff at the front desk. She was looking for backup, but none came. Tyler, the manager, stood with his arms crossed, his expression clear. She was on her own. Naomi exhaled softly, shaking her head. You've done enough talking. Now you can deal with the consequences of your actions. Jamal adjusted the strap of his bag, staying quiet. He didn't want to be there anymore. He didn't want the attention. He just wanted this moment to end. But Naomi wasn't finished, not yet. Son, she said gently, looking at him, do you want to leave or do you want to stay and practice? Jamal hesitated. His first instinct was to leave. He hated the stares, the whispers, the cameras, but then he thought about why he came here every morning, why he woke up early when other kids were still asleep. He thought about his goals, the sacrifices, and he straightened his back. I'm staying, he said quietly but firmly. Naomi gave him a small nod of approval. Then we're staying. She turned back to Karen, her expression unreadable. You wanted him gone, but he's staying, and now you have a choice. Karen's mouth twitched. Choice? What are you talking about? You can walk out of here quietly, Naomi said. Or you can stay and explain to everyone in this gym why you felt the need to humiliate a teenage boy. Either way, the cameras already have your story. A ripple of murmurs swept through the onlookers. Some of them shifted, waiting to see what Karen would do. Karen's face flushed crimson. She glanced at the security guard, hoping for a lifeline. He simply shook his head. Ma'am, he said cautiously, I think it's best you calm down. This is ridiculous, Karen snapped, her voice rising again. I was just trying to… Stop, Tyler interrupted, stepping forward. Karen, you've caused enough disruption for one day. I'll be reporting this to corporate management. You can expect a call about your membership status. Karen's eyes widened. You're going to ban me? For what? For protecting the gym? No, Tyler said evenly. For harassing another member and violating our code of conduct. And frankly, for embarrassing yourself in front of the entire building. A low murmur of agreement moved through the room. Karen's shoulders stiffened, but her voice faltered. You're all making a big deal out of nothing. I didn't do anything wrong. Naomi's gaze was steady. Yes, you did. And it's time you realize that. Karen froze, realizing there was no escape from the reality that had just unfolded. Her reputation, her false sense of authority, shattered. Meanwhile, one of the teens who had been quietly recording slipped his phone back into his pocket. This is definitely going viral, he whispered to his friend. Karen caught the words and paled. Wait, you're not going to post that, are you? No one answered her. Naomi turned back to Jamal. You ready to warm up? Jamal nodded. Yeah. Naomi gave Karen one last glance, sharp, final. Then she and Jamal walked toward the basketball court, leaving Karen standing in the middle of the gym, surrounded by stares that felt heavier than any words. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Behind her, Tyler calmly picked up the phone at the front desk. Hi, I need to report a member incident, he said into the receiver. Yes, it involves harassment. Yes, we have video. Karen's stomach dropped. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in control anymore, and that was only the beginning. Karen stood frozen in the middle of the gym, her arms limp at her sides. The weight of silence pressed down on her. People were still staring, not with curiosity anymore, but with quiet judgment. The whispers grew louder around her, like a tide she couldn't stop. She glanced toward the door as if she could somehow just walk away, but she didn't move. The truth was sinking in. This wasn't going away. Not today. Not ever. Meanwhile, Naomi and Jamal crossed the gym floor. Jamal bent down, lacing up his basketball shoes. His movements were steady, but inside, his stomach churned. He hated this. He hated that once again, someone had looked at him and decided what kind of person he was before knowing a single thing about him. Naomi sensed his tension. She crouched beside him, her voice low but firm. "Listen to me," she said. "You don't let someone like her steal your focus. You came here to work, to train. So that's what you're going to do. Don't give her the power to take this from you." Jamal nodded, trying to let her words sink in. He dribbled the ball slowly at first, the sound echoing in the suddenly too quiet gym. Across the room, Karen finally snapped out of her daze. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, her voice trembling slightly now. She turned to Tyler, the manager, who was still on the phone. "Are you really calling them? This was just a misunderstanding." Tyler didn't even look at her. A misunderstanding is when you forget someone's name. This was harassment, and yes, I'm reporting it. Karen's eyes darted around, desperate for someone, anyone, to take her side, but no one spoke up. Even the people she saw regularly at the gym avoided her gaze. "This is insane," she said louder. "You're all making me out to be some kind of villain. I was just looking out for the safety of this place." Naomi, who was now passing the ball to Jamal as he warmed up, turned slightly toward Karen. Her voice carried easily across the room. "The only person this place needed protecting from was you." The words hit like a hammer. Karen flinched. The security guard stepped closer now. "Ma'am, I think it's time for you to leave for today. Let management handle this." Karen opened her mouth, ready to argue again, but the look on his face told her she had no more ground to stand on. She grabbed her gym bag with jerky movements and stormed toward the exit. As she passed the rows of treadmills and weight racks, people quietly pulled out their phones again, some pretending to check messages but clearly aiming their cameras at her retreating figure. She could feel it. This was going to follow her. When the glass doors finally shut behind her, the gym seemed to exhale. Naomi turned her full attention back to Jamal. "You okay?" she asked again, her tone softer this time. He paused mid-dribble, looking down at the ball. "I'm used to it," he said quietly. Naomi's eyes softened, but there was a flash of pain there too. "You shouldn't have to be used to it," she said. "Not here, not anywhere." They didn't talk more. They didn't have to. Naomi clapped her hands once, breaking the heaviness of the moment. "All right, 10 layups. Let's move." Jamal nodded and launched into his routine. He moved with focus, pushing the tension out through each shot, each rebound. And as he worked, Naomi watched him with the same pride and protectiveness she always felt. But just as the rhythm of training began to return, Jamal noticed something. A young man in the corner, still holding his phone, was speaking quietly into it. "Yeah," he said, "I got the whole thing. I'm sending it to you now. This is gonna blow up online." Jamal froze mid-dribble. Naomi followed his gaze and understood instantly. "It's already being shared," she said under her breath. And she was right. By the time Karen reached her car in the parking lot, the first video clip had already been posted. Within minutes, it spread across local social media pages with captions like, "Woman at Crestwood Gym harasses black teen, then his mom shows up." The comments started pouring in. "Wow, disgusting. She really picked the wrong kid to mess with. Naomi Carter? The Naomi Carter? Oh, this is about to get huge." Naomi's phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Jamal didn't need to see what was already happening outside these gym walls. Not yet. But Naomi knew this wasn't just a random confrontation anymore. This was going to become something bigger. Across town, at a cozy cafe, two women were scrolling through their phones when the video popped up. "Oh my God," one of them gasped. "Isn't that Karen from the Homeowners Association?" Her friend leaned closer. "Oh, she's finished. That's already got thousands of views." Back in the gym, Jamal sank another shot. Naomi gave a small nod. "Good. Keep your focus. Don't let the noise out there take away what you're building in here." Jamal exhaled slowly and kept moving. But outside these walls, the noise was already growing louder. By the time Jamal finished his warm-up drills, the quiet hum of the gym had returned. The teens on the basketball court were back to their game. The treadmills buzzed again, and the clang of weights filled the air. But beneath that surface, there was still an energy, an unspoken awareness that something important had just unfolded. Naomi sat on the sideline bench, her arms crossed, watching Jamal move. Her face was calm, but her mind wasn't. She could feel her phone vibrating in her pocket again and again. She knew what it meant. In 2025, moments like this didn't stay contained. Not when half the room had been recording. Not when the name Naomi Carter carried weight beyond this town. Jamal jogged over, sweat glistening on his forehead. "Mom," he said softly, "are they really going to post it?" Naomi met his eyes. "They already have," she said gently. Jamal sighed, looking down at his shoes. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to come in, do my work, and leave. I don't want people looking at me like I'm some story." Naomi's gaze softened. "I know, but sometimes we don't get to choose when we become a story. And sometimes, the story needs to be told." Before Jamal could respond, Tyler, the manager, approached cautiously. "Miss Carter?" Naomi turned her head slightly. "Yes? I just wanted to apologize again," Tyler said sincerely. "What happened today, it doesn't reflect this gym or its values. We'll be contacting Karen directly about her behavior. She may lose her membership entirely. I also want you to know, we'll release a statement if needed." Naomi nodded slowly. "Thank you. But it's not just about this gym. It's about people thinking they can treat kids like mine as if they don't belong anywhere. That has to change." Tyler shifted uneasily. "I understand. And for what it's worth, a lot of us here support you. Everyone saw what really happened." Naomi offered a faint, polite smile. "Good, because the truth always comes out." As Tyler walked back to the front desk, Naomi finally pulled out her phone. Dozens of notifications lit up the screen. Messages from friends, old teammates, even reporters. One headline already stood out on a local news app. "Viral video, Olympic coach confronts woman who harassed black teen at gym." Naomi's thumb hovered over the screen. She didn't open it. Not yet. Meanwhile, outside the gym, Karen sat in her SUV with trembling hands gripping the steering wheel. Her phone kept buzzing too, but for a different reason. A friend had already texted her the video. She watched herself on screen, her own voice echoing back, sharp and dripping with arrogance. "You people always think you can just wander into places you don't belong." Karen's stomach twisted. She looked at the comments flooding beneath the clip. "Classic Karen behavior. This is disgusting. Cancel her membership and her attitude. Does she know who Naomi Carter is? Wow, she picked the wrong family." The view count was rising by the second. Karen threw her phone into the passenger seat and leaned back, her breathing shallow. She'd been caught before, complaints at the homeowners association, a heated argument at the country club, but nothing had ever spread. Not like this. Back inside, Jamal finished his final drill and sat down next to his mom. "So what now?" he asked quietly. Naomi placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Now we do what we always do. We keep working. Let the world do what it wants. We don't stop." But Jamal hesitated. "What if people at school see it? What if they start treating me differently? I don't want pity." Naomi's eyes softened. "They won't give you pity, Jamal. They'll give you respect. And the ones who don't, they were never worth your time anyway." As they sat in silence, a teenage boy from the court walked over nervously. He held up his phone. "Hey, Jamal, right?" Jamal nodded cautiously. "I just wanted to say, what she did wasn't okay, and you handled it way better than I would have. I already reported her account on social media." Jamal blinked, surprised. Thanks." The boy smiled awkwardly and jogged back to his friends. Naomi watched him go, a quiet pride flickering across her face. "See," she said softly, "you don't even realize it yet, but you're showing other people how to stand strong, even when it's hard." Just then, Naomi's phone buzzed again, this time with a familiar name flashing across the screen. It was from the U.S. Olympic Committee's media office. She knew what they wanted, a statement, a comment, maybe even an interview. She ignored the call. Not here, not yet. But the story was already growing beyond their control. Across the state, in a newsroom, a producer turned to a journalist. "You seeing this? Naomi Carter's involved in another viral moment. Get the segment ready. This one's going national." Back in the parking lot, Karen stared blankly at her reflection in the rearview mirror. She could already feel the walls closing in. And inside the gym, Jamal picked up the ball again. Naomi stood, clapping her hands once. "All right, back to work. 10 free throws, let's go." But even as he practiced, he knew the world outside these walls was already watching. And it wasn't going to stop. By the time Jamal finished his next round of shots, the world outside Crestwood Gym was already changing. Across town, phones were lighting up with the video. On social media, it spread like wildfire. Clips of Karen's face twisted in anger, her voice dripping with entitlement, were stitched together with captions that stung. Racist Karen harasses teen at gym, didn't know his mom is an Olympic coach. Comment sections filled with outrage, disbelief, and even support for Jamal. Some users tagged national news outlets. Others started digging into who Karen really was. Someone had already identified her last name from a local HOA newsletter. Naomi's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't just the media calling. Old teammates, journalists she'd worked with during her career, even athletes she'd mentored were texting her. "Naomi, I just saw what happened. Do you want me to post something? You shouldn't have to go through this. I'm so proud of how you handled that. Jamal deserves better. Tell me where that gym is. I'll personally call them out." Naomi silenced her phone. She didn't need the noise, not yet. Her priority was Jamal. He was sitting on the bench now, staring at the floor. The weight of it all was settling in. This wasn't just a simple incident anymore. It was becoming a public spectacle. "Mom," he murmured, "this isn't what I wanted. I didn't want people to know me because of this." Naomi crouched in front of him, her hand resting on his knee. "Listen to me. People won't just know you because of what happened today. They'll know you for how you respond to it. That's what matters. That's what lasts." Jamal nodded slowly, but his eyes still held uncertainty. Before they could talk more, Tyler approached again. He looked pale, holding his own buzzing phone. "Miss Carter," he said carefully, "the gym's corporate office already saw the video. They want to make a public statement. They're asking if you're willing to speak with them." Naomi's expression didn't change. "Not now," she said firmly. "Right now, I'm here for my son. This isn't about corporate PR. It's about accountability." Tyler nodded quickly. "Understood. I'll tell them you'll get back to them when you're ready." Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Karen sat in her car, scrolling through her phone in a panic. Every time she refreshed, the view count on the video went higher. 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. The comments were brutal. Her face says it all. She knew exactly what she was doing. Karen tried to throw out an athlete. His mom is a literal Olympic coach. Karma. Hope she enjoys her 15 minutes of shame. Karen's breathing grew shallow. She tried typing out a response, some kind of explanation, but deleted it immediately. Nothing she wrote sounded like it would help. She could already feel the tide turning against her. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from the Homeowners Association group chat. "Karen, is this you in that video going around? You need to explain yourself. This looks really bad." Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "It was all a misunderstanding. I was just protecting the gym." But even she knew those words sounded weak now. Back inside the gym, Jamal finished his drills. Naomi stayed close but gave him space. She watched him move, watched the way he pushed through the tension in his body. He wasn't just training his game, he was training himself to endure the weight of a world that too often saw him as less. As they packed up their things, a woman in her late 30s approached hesitantly. She wore workout leggings and held a water bottle nervously. "Miss Carter?" she asked softly. Naomi turned. "Yes? I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for what she did. I've seen Jamal here before. He's polite, hardworking. He didn't deserve that." Naomi offered a small, gracious smile. "Thank you for saying that." The woman glanced at Jamal. "Keep going, kid. Don't let anyone tell you where you do or don't belong." Jamal gave a faint smile back. "Thanks." As the woman walked away, Naomi slipped her phone into her pocket. "See," she told him quietly, "not everyone will try to tear you down. Some people will stand with you." But she knew the real storm was only beginning. Across the country, in a morning news studio, a producer was already handing a script to an anchor. "We've got a viral story coming out of Crestwood. An Olympic coach confronted a woman who tried to kick her son out of a gym. Video's already at 100,000 views." The anchor raised an eyebrow. "Let's put it on the lineup for tonight. Viewers are going to eat this up." Meanwhile, in her car, Karen finally got a call, not from a friend, but from her husband. His voice was tight. "Karen, what did you do?" he demanded. "Do you have any idea who that boy's mother is? This is all over the internet." Karen's stomach twisted even tighter. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Back in the gym, Naomi placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. "Ready to go home?" He nodded. "Yeah." As they stepped outside into the cool afternoon air, Naomi's phone buzzed one more time. This time, it was from a number she hadn't seen in years. It was from Coach Reynolds, the head of the U.S. Olympic training program. The message was short. "Saw the video, call me. There's more we can do with this." Naomi looked at Jamal, then at the phone, then back toward the gym. She knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. By the time Naomi and Jamal reached the parking lot, the quiet afternoon air felt different. It wasn't just another day anymore. It was the start of something neither of them had planned for. Jamal slipped into the passenger seat of their SUV, staring out the window, his reflection faintly visible in the glass. Naomi took a deep breath before starting the car. She could feel the weight of the buzzing phone in her bag, but she didn't look at it. Not yet. As they pulled out of the parking lot, a small crowd of people outside the gym were already discussing the incident. A young man who had recorded one of the videos was showing it to a group of curious onlookers. "Look at this," he said. "She literally knocked his bag off the bench, and then his mom walked in. Man, you should have seen her face. She had no clue who she was dealing with." Within minutes, hashtags were starting to trend. #Crestwood Gym, incident #Naomi Carter, #Justice. For Jamal, inside the SUV, the drive was silent for a while. Jamal leaned his head back, his fingers loosely gripping his phone, though he hadn't unlocked it. He didn't want to see the notifications. He didn't want to scroll through comments from strangers who suddenly knew his name. Finally, Naomi spoke. "You did nothing wrong," she said firmly, eyes fixed on the road. "I know," Jamal replied quietly. It's always the same. People look at me and decide what I am before I even open my mouth, and now the whole world's gonna see it." Naomi glanced at him briefly. "Good. Let them see. Let them see exactly what we deal with. Maybe it'll make someone think twice before they do it again." Jamal didn't answer. He wasn't sure he believed it would change anything. Meanwhile, miles away in a bustling newsroom, editors were reviewing the footage. A junior producer looked up from her computer. "This isn't just another random viral clip," she said. "That's Naomi Carter. She's a legend. This is going to explode." The senior editor nodded. "Write it up. Get her athletic achievements in the background story. People will eat this up. We'll run it in the evening slot." Karen, on the other hand, sat in her car outside her suburban home, unable to go inside. She was scrolling endlessly through the video, watching herself again and again. The comments were multiplying by the second. Classic Karen energy. She really tried to bully a kid and picked the wrong family. Hope she enjoys losing her membership and her reputation. Her hands trembled as she tried to dial her husband again. This time he didn't answer. A sinking feeling settled in her chest. She'd always managed to talk her way out of things before, but this was different. The internet didn't forget. Inside the Carter home later that evening, Naomi placed her gym bag down and poured herself some water. Jamal sat at the kitchen table, scrolling reluctantly through his phone now. "It's everywhere," he said, his voice low. Naomi walked over and glanced at the screen. News headlines were already popping up. "Teen harassed at gym for not belonging. Turns out he's the son of an Olympic coach. Racist confrontation in Crestwood Gym goes viral. Naomi Carter speaks out. This is what our kids face every day." But Naomi hadn't even made a statement yet. It was other people speaking for her, filling in the blanks. Jamal put the phone down. "I didn't ask for this." Naomi sat across from him, her voice soft but steady. "I know, but maybe this can be more than just what happened to you. Maybe it can open some eyes." Before Jamal could respond, there was a knock at the door. Naomi stood and opened it cautiously. On the porch stood a local reporter, microphone in hand, with a cameraman behind her. "Ms. Carter?" the reporter asked gently. "I'm sorry to come unannounced, but the community is talking about what happened today. Would you be willing to share a few words?" Naomi's jaw tightened. She didn't want this to become a spectacle, but she also knew silence would leave room for someone else to control the narrative. "Not right now," she said firmly. "My son needs space." The reporter nodded, respectful but persistent. "We understand. But if you decide to speak, we'd like to give you that platform. People are listening." Naomi closed the door quietly. She turned back to Jamal, who looked both exhausted and conflicted. "This isn't going away, is it?" he asked. "No," Naomi admitted. "But how we handle it? That's up to us." Across the city, Karen's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from the gym's corporate office. She stared at it, her heart pounding. She already knew what they were going to say. And somewhere in a conference room at the U.S. Olympic Training Center, a group of executives were already discussing Naomi Carter's name, debating whether this moment could spark a new campaign about inclusion and respect in sports facilities nationwide. Jamal sat quietly, lost in thought. He didn't know it yet, but this incident would take on a life far beyond him, beyond Karen, beyond the gym itself. It was only the first ripple of a wave that was about to crash on everyone involved. The next morning, Crestwood woke up to the story. It was on every local newsfeed, every trending tag, and even the neighborhood message boards. What had started as a phone recording inside a quiet suburban gym was now making headlines far beyond their small community. Jamal woke up to dozens of notifications on his phone. Classmates had texted him, some offering support, others simply curious. There were messages from people he hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, I saw you on the news. Are you okay? Man, you handled that so calmly. Respect." Can you believe she actually said that? Wild. He put the phone face down on his nightstand and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't the kind of attention he wanted. He wasn't a kid who liked the spotlight. He just wanted to train, to focus on his dream of basketball scholarships and college recruitment. But now his name was attached to something much bigger, something he couldn't control. Meanwhile, downstairs, Naomi was already dressed, sipping her morning coffee at the kitchen counter. Her phone was blowing up with calls from media outlets, CNN, ESPN, even Sports Illustrated. They all wanted a statement. Some wanted interviews. Others wanted her opinion on systemic racism in gyms, in public spaces, in everyday life. She ignored most of them. For now, Jamal came first. She heard his slow footsteps on the stairs. When he appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression was tired. "Mom," he said, "do I have to go to school today? Everyone's going to be talking about it." Naomi thought for a moment. "You don't have to," she said. "But running away from it won't make it go away either. You didn't do anything wrong. You shouldn't hide." Jamal sighed and sat down at the table. "I just don't want to walk in there and feel like people are staring at me because they feel sorry for me, or because they're waiting for me to say something." Naomi sat across from him, her voice calm but strong. "Then don't go in there as the boy who was harassed. Go in there as the boy who stayed calm, who didn't let someone else's ignorance break him. That's what people saw, and that's who you are." Jamal didn't respond, but her words lingered. Across town, Karen's morning was very different. She sat at her dining room table, her phone clutched in her hands, scrolling through the avalanche of comments. Her social media profiles had been flooded with angry messages. She'd received emails from people she didn't even know, and worse, her gym had officially suspended her membership pending a full review. The email had been blunt. "Your behavior violated the facility's code of conduct. Until further notice, you are prohibited from entering Crestwood Gym. Corporate will follow up with you directly regarding next steps." Karen's husband paced the living room, visibly frustrated. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he said sharply. "You went after the son of Naomi Carter. She's a public figure. Of course it went viral." Karen's voice was small. "I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," he snapped. "You just assumed. And now our name is all over the internet." Karen's phone buzzed again, this time a call from an unknown number. She answered hesitantly. "Mrs. Hastings? This is Crestwood Homeowners Association. We need you to attend an emergency meeting tonight. There have been complaints." Karen's stomach dropped. It was all unraveling. Back at the Carter home, Naomi was watching the morning news quietly while Jamal ate breakfast. A local reporter was standing in front of the gym from yesterday. Yesterday's viral video sparked conversations nationwide about implicit bias and racism in everyday spaces, the reporter said. "We reached out to the gym's management for comment. They've since confirmed that the woman seen in the video has been suspended, and they plan to host an inclusion and diversity seminar for staff and members." Jamal looked up from his cereal. "They're really doing all that?" Naomi nodded. "When the truth gets exposed, it forces people to act," but Jamal still seemed uneasy. "It just feels weird. Like everyone suddenly cares now, but where were they before?" Naomi placed a hand on his. "Sometimes it takes one spark to light a fire. Maybe this is that spark." Meanwhile, at the gym itself, Tyler was busy fielding calls. The corporate office was demanding a full incident report. Members were calling to express support for Jamal and Naomi, and some were even threatening to cancel their own memberships if the gym didn't take a public stance. And online, the story was snowballing. An Olympic advocacy group had shared the video, writing, "Racism doesn't take a break, not even at the gym. Thank you, Naomi Carter, for standing up for your son and for all the kids who face this every day." That post alone had over 200,000 likes within hours. By midday, national outlets picked it up. Good Morning America announced they wanted Naomi and Jamal on the show. Twitter threads analyzed Karen's body language. TikTok edits dramatized the moment Naomi walked into the gym like a hero in a movie. Jamal sat quietly as Naomi's phone buzzed again. This time it was Coach Reynolds. The same message as before, but with one more line. "This moment could be bigger than just a viral video. Call me. We need to talk about the platform you have now." Naomi stared at the screen. She knew what Reynolds meant. This wasn't just about Karen. It wasn't just about the gym. It was about what came next. Across the city, Karen sat in silence, realizing the internet had already decided her fate. And for Jamal, what had started as an ordinary day of training had turned into something that would change his life forever. By noon, the story had officially left the confines of Crestwood and entered the national spotlight. It wasn't just a local trending tag anymore. It was on morning talk shows, news tickers, and even sports blogs. Clips of the incident were now stitched with footage of Naomi Carter during her Olympic days. Her powerful sprints, her gold medal ceremony, her inspirational speeches as a national coach. Headlines paired her legendary past with the present-day humiliation her son had endured. Olympic gold medalist Naomi Carter confronts racist Karen at local gym. Viral video shows. Harassment of teen athlete training for nationals. How one mother's calm response is sparking conversations nationwide. At the Carter home, Naomi sat at the kitchen table, scrolling silently through the messages piling in. Former teammates were offering support. Sports organizations were releasing statements. Even the mayor of Crestwood had posted a comment on social media condemning what happened. Jamal sat on the couch, his phone buzzing non-stop. Friends had sent him screenshots of TikToks, some dramatic, some mocking Karen, others praising his composure. "Bro, you're all over the internet, you're trending. Man, you handled that like a pro. Respect. You should speak out about this. People are listening." Jamal didn't feel like a hero. He felt exposed. "Mom," he finally said, looking over at Naomi, "do I have to say something? Can't we just let this die down?" Naomi looked up, her expression calm but serious. "Jamal, it's not going to die down. People are talking. And if we don't tell our story, someone else will tell it for us." Jamal hesitated. "But I'm not like you. I'm not used to cameras and interviews. I just wanted to practice basketball." Naomi softened her tone. "I know, and you still will. But this isn't just about you anymore. It's about every kid who walks into a space and is treated like they don't belong. You have a chance to be a voice for them even if you don't want the attention." Before Jamal could answer, the doorbell rang. Naomi glanced toward it. Through the window, she could see a black SUV with a small local news logo on the side. A reporter stood on the porch holding a microphone. Next to her was a cameraman adjusting the lens. Jamal tensed. "They're here?" Naomi stood slowly. "Stay inside. I'll handle it." She opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Miss Carter," the reporter began gently, "thank you for your time. We just wanted to ask, how are you and your son doing after yesterday's incident?" Naomi's gaze was calm, controlled. "My son is fine," she said firmly. "But this isn't about us personally. It's about what this shows. How quick some people are to judge, to assume who belongs and who doesn't. This happens every day to kids who don't have cameras to protect them. Remember that." The reporter nodded. "Would you be willing to do a sit-down interview later? People really want to hear from you directly." Naomi paused. "Maybe later. Right now, I'm focused on my son. He needs peace more than he needs publicity." The reporter respected that and thanked her before leaving. Meanwhile, across town, Karen was living a very different reality. She was in her kitchen, pacing back and forth as her phone rang non-stop. She had already received 3 voicemails from the HOA demanding her presence at an emergency meeting. Her husband was barely speaking to her. Her email inbox was filled with messages, some angry, some mocking. Local businesses she frequented were quietly distancing themselves. And when she tried to log into her social media, she saw hundreds of tags with her name attached to the video. She sat down at her dining table, holding her head in her hands. For the first time, she realized this wasn't going away. Later that day, at the gym, Tyler stood in the lobby addressing members. "We'll be instituting new sensitivity training for all staff and updating our member code of conduct. What happened here doesn't reflect our values, and I promise it won't be ignored." People nodded, some relieved, some skeptical. At the same time, Naomi's phone buzzed with another text, this one from Coach Reynolds again. "Naomi, this is getting big. National outlets are calling us. If you want to control the narrative, you need to make a statement soon. Otherwise, the media will spin it their way." Naomi looked at the message for a long moment. She hated media storms, but she also knew Reynolds was right. She couldn't let Jamal become just another viral clip without context. She walked back to the living room. Jamal was sitting quietly, staring at his phone. "They're saying all kinds of stuff online," he murmured. "Some of it's nice, but some people, they're already twisting it, saying I exaggerated." Naomi sat beside him, putting an arm around his shoulder. "The truth is the truth. It doesn't matter how they twist it. What matters is how we choose to respond." Jamal looked at her. "So, what do we do?" Naomi exhaled slowly. "We'll talk, on our terms. And we'll make sure people understand this isn't just about one kid in one gym, it's bigger than that." Across the city, Karen sat in her car outside the HOA building, bracing herself for the meeting. Through the window, she could see the disapproving faces of neighbors waiting inside. Her world, the one she'd built on control and influence, was starting to crumble. And Naomi's world, the one she'd built on discipline, resilience, and truth, was about to rise even higher than before. Karen gripped the steering wheel tightly, staring at the dull beige building in front of her. The Crestwood Homeowners Association office was usually a place where she held power, where her complaints about noisy neighbors or unkempt lawns were taken seriously. But tonight, it felt like a courtroom. Through the glass doors, she saw her neighbors sitting around a long table, their expressions tense. They had all seen the video. Some were whispering to each other, shaking their heads. Karen could already tell the sympathy she used to command was gone. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. "Karen," the HOA chairperson said, his voice clipped, "please have a seat." Karen sat down slowly. The air in the room felt heavy, judgmental. "We called this emergency meeting," the chairperson continued, "because the association has received over a dozen complaints about your behavior at the gym. Several residents feel your actions have reflected poorly on our community as a whole." Karen bristled. "I was trying to protect the gym. I didn't know who that boy was." A woman across the table cut her off. "It doesn't matter who he was. What matters is how you treated him. Did you really think you could push a teenager out of a gym because you didn't think he belonged?" Karen opened her mouth, but another neighbor chimed in. "Karen, you've done this before. At the pool, at the community center, always making assumptions. This time you picked the wrong family, and now the entire neighborhood is in the spotlight for the wrong reasons." Karen flushed red. "You're all blowing this out of proportion. It was a misunderstanding." The chairperson leaned forward. "A misunderstanding doesn't go viral nationwide, and frankly, it's not the first time we've heard complaints about you." Karen froze. She hadn't realized how many people had been quietly keeping track of her behavior. "This isn't just about you anymore," the chairperson said coldly. "The HOA has to decide if your continued presence in leadership roles reflects our community values. And from what we're seeing, it doesn't." Karen's stomach churned. She was losing control. Meanwhile, across town, Naomi sat at the kitchen table with Jamal. The glow of her laptop screen illuminated her face as she scrolled through emails. The inbox was full. Requests from talk shows, statements from advocacy groups, even messages from parents sharing their own stories. One in particular stood out. It was from a mother in Chicago. "My son was kicked out of a swim club because someone assumed he didn't have a membership. Seeing your son stay calm and seeing you stand up for him, it gave me hope. Thank you." Naomi read it silently, then turned to Jamal. "Do you see this? You're already making a difference, even if it doesn't feel like it yet." Jamal leaned on the table, his fingers tapping nervously. "But what if this just dies down and nothing changes?" Naomi shook her head. "It won't die down, not if we use this moment the right way." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Coach Reynolds calling. She answered. "Naomi?" His deep voice came through. "I've been watching." This story isn't just trending, it's starting a national conversation. The Olympic Committee wants you to speak at a press conference about inclusion in sports facilities. They think this could lead to real change. Naomi hesitated. I don't want this to become a publicity circus. My son doesn't need more attention. Reynolds' voice softened. I get it. But you've always been about more than medals. This could help a lot of families, Naomi. It's bigger than you now. Naomi glanced at Jamal. He was scrolling through his phone again, reading comments, some supportive, some hateful. She could see the confusion in his eyes, anger mixed with pride, shame mixed with strength. I'll think about it, she told Reynolds, but if we do this, it'll be on our terms. After the call, she closed her laptop and looked at Jamal. How about we take a walk, clear our heads before we decide anything? Jamal nodded. As they stepped outside, the crisp evening air wrapped around them. Down the street, a couple walking their dog stopped to wave. We saw the video, the man said softly. Your son's a good kid. We're rooting for you both. Jamal managed a small smile. Back at the HOA meeting, the vote was swift. The chairperson folded his hands and said, effective immediately, Karen Hastings is suspended from any HOA leadership duties. We will be issuing a community statement distancing the association from her actions. Karen's heart sank. Her neighbors weren't even looking at her anymore. When she left the building, a small group of local reporters was already waiting. Microphones extended toward her. Karen, do you have anything to say about the viral video? Do you regret your actions? Karen shielded her face, muttering, no comment, as she hurried past the cameras. But her silence didn't save her. By the time she reached home, the HOA's decision was already posted online. Crestwood HOA suspends board member after viral racist incident at gym. And with every new headline, Karen's world got smaller. Meanwhile, Naomi and Jamal walked quietly through their neighborhood. Naomi's phone buzzed again with another message, this one from a national civil rights organization. We'd like to invite you to speak at our upcoming Youth in Sports Forum. Your voice could inspire thousands. Naomi stared at the screen. This was becoming bigger than she ever imagined. She looked at Jamal. You know, this isn't just our story anymore. It's starting to belong to everyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong. Jamal nodded slowly, realizing for the first time that maybe, just maybe, what happened could mean something more than just pain. The next morning was heavier than usual. Jamal stood at the bathroom sink, staring at his own reflection. The boy looking back at him didn't seem different, but he felt different. In less than 48 hours, he'd gone from being just another teenager training for his dream to the face of a national conversation he never asked for. Downstairs, Naomi was already dressed, sipping tea as she read through her emails. More media requests, more messages from advocacy groups, more opportunities to speak publicly. She exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of it all pressing on her shoulders. Ready for school? She asked when Jamal finally came down. He hesitated. Not really, Naomi nodded. I get it, but running away won't help. You've done nothing wrong, remember that. Jamal adjusted his backpack. I don't want to walk into class and have everyone staring at me, whispering. I don't want people treating me like some symbol. Naomi's voice was gentle but firm. They're going to look, Jamal, but you decide how they see you. Hold your head high. Walk in with the same focus you have on the court. He nodded slowly. Okay. When they arrived at school, the parking lot was already buzzing. Students gathered in clusters, their faces glued to their phones. As Jamal walked toward the entrance, conversations hushed. Hey, a kid called out. Isn't that the guy from the video? Another whispered. Yeah, that's him, the Karen kid. Jamal felt the stares burning into his back. He kept his head straight, walking with deliberate calm. Inside the hallway, some classmates offered supportive smiles. A few even patted him on the shoulder. Yo, man, you handled that like a champ, one boy said. But others weren't as kind. Two boys snickered near the lockers. Bet he's loving the attention now, one of them muttered. Jamal ignored them. He found a seat in homeroom and took a deep breath. His teacher, Mrs. Andrews, offered him a reassuring nod. Glad you're here, she said quietly. Meanwhile, across town, Karen's morning was unraveling further. She sat at her kitchen table, her hair unkempt, scrolling through another wave of headlines. Karen Hastings identified as Woman in Viral Gym Incident. Local HOA suspends member after racist confrontation. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her employer. She answered, her voice shaky. Karen, we've seen the video, her manager said flatly. We can't have this kind of publicity attached to the company. You're on indefinite leave effective immediately. Karen froze. Wait, are you firing me? HR will follow up, the voice replied coldly. But yes, you're no longer welcome in the office. Karen's heart sank. She'd always thought of herself as untouchable in her community. Now everything was slipping through her fingers, her job, her reputation, even her place in the neighborhood. While Karen's world crumbled, Naomi's influence was expanding. That afternoon, she received a call from the mayor's office. Ms. Carter, the mayor said warmly, what happened to your son is unacceptable. We'd like to invite you and Jamal to a community forum we're hosting on inclusion and bias awareness. It would mean a lot if you spoke. Naomi hesitated. I'm not sure Jamal is ready for that. I understand, the mayor said, but sometimes voices like his make the biggest impact. You'd be surprised how many kids look up to him already. After the call, Naomi sat silently at the kitchen table, thinking. She didn't want to push Jamal into the spotlight, but she also couldn't deny the momentum building. That evening, Jamal returned home from school exhausted. He dropped his backpack by the door. How was it? Naomi asked. He shrugged. Weird. Some kids were cool about it. Others, not so much. They just kept staring. I hate it. Naomi placed a hand on his shoulder. I know. But you held your head high. That's what matters. Jamal hesitated. Mom, are we going to talk about it publicly? Like, do interviews? Naomi studied his face carefully. Only if you're ready, but this moment could help others. It could make a difference beyond us. Jamal was quiet for a long moment. Then he finally nodded. If it helps other kids, I'll do it. But I want to do it with you. Naomi gave a small, proud smile. We'll do it together. Meanwhile, in the HOA building that same evening, Karen faced yet another wave of humiliation. Neighbors she'd once bossed around now spoke openly against her. You've embarrassed this entire community, one man said. You've always acted like you were better than everyone else, another added. Karen tried to defend herself. I was just looking out for the gym. I didn't know. No, the chairperson interrupted. You didn't care to know, and now you're facing the consequences. Karen left the meeting in silence, the murmurs of her neighbors following her out the door like a shadow. That night, the story hit national primetime. Major anchors dissected the video. Civil rights activists weighed in. Sports figures tweeted their support for Jamal and Naomi. By bedtime, Naomi's phone had another message from Coach Reynolds. Good morning, America wants you both. It's time to decide if you'll speak up. Naomi looked at Jamal, who was scrolling through messages of support from other young athletes. Looks like it's time, Naomi said softly. Jamal nodded. Let's do it. But on our terms. The decision was made. Tomorrow they would speak. And for Karen, tomorrow would bring even more fallout. The next morning, Naomi woke before sunrise. She sat at the kitchen table, a mug of tea warming her hands as the soft glow of dawn crept through the blinds. Today wasn't like other mornings. Today, she and Jamal would step into the public eye, not as just mother and son, but as unwilling symbols of something much larger. On her phone were dozens of new emails. A message from Good Morning America, another from CNN. Even ESPN had requested an interview, framing the story as part of a larger discussion on bias in sports facilities. There was also a heartfelt note from a well-known Olympic athlete Naomi had once trained with. You've always stood tall, Naomi. This moment chose you for a reason. Speak your truth. Naomi exhaled and set the phone down. She wasn't afraid of the cameras. She had faced them countless times before as an athlete, but she was worried about Jamal. He was 16. This was never supposed to be his burden. Upstairs, Jamal stared at his closet, unsure what to wear. He hated the thought of being on TV, but deep down, he knew this was more than just about him now. He remembered his mom's words the night before, how this could help other kids who had been treated like they didn't belong. That thought gave him a flicker of strength. When he came downstairs, Naomi smiled softly. You ready? Jamal shrugged. As ready as I can be. They drove quietly to the small local studio that had set up for a remote interview. On the way, they passed the Crestwood gym. Outside, a few reporters were still camped near the entrance. Someone had even taped a handwritten sign to the door. We stand with Jamal. Jamal noticed it from the window and felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. For the first time since the incident, he didn't feel completely alone. Meanwhile, miles away, Karen's life was unraveling further. She sat in her living room, blinds drawn, scrolling endlessly through her phone. Her face was pale, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. Every time she refreshed, there were more comments, more messages. Local businesses she frequented had quietly removed her from their client lists. Her social media accounts were flooded with people calling her out, tagging her in posts demanding accountability. She'd lost her HOA position. Her job had placed her on indefinite leave, which she knew was just a polite way of saying she was done. Even her so-called friends were backing away. And now, reporters were outside her house. When she peeked through the blinds, she saw cameras on her lawn. "Mrs. Hastings," a journalist called from the sidewalk, "do you regret your actions? Would you like to apologize publicly?" Karen shut the blinds quickly, retreating into the darkness of her home. But the questions followed her, echoing louder than her own thoughts. Back at the studio, Naomi and Jamal sat side by side in two simple chairs. A producer adjusted the lights and tested the microphones. "Just relax," the producer said kindly. "This isn't live, we're recording. You can take your time." Jamal nodded slightly, his palms sweating. Naomi placed a hand on his knee. "Remember, we're just telling the truth, that's all." When the interview started, the questions were soft but pointed. "Naomi, what went through your mind when you walked into that gym and saw what was happening?" the reporter asked. Naomi's eyes stayed steady on the camera. "What went through my mind? That my son was being treated like he didn't belong, like his very presence was a threat. And sadly, it wasn't the first time I've seen this. It's the reality many black families face every day." The reporter turned to Jamal. "Jamal, how did it feel in that moment?" Jamal hesitated, then spoke quietly. "It felt small, like no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, some people will always see me as less. But I tried to stay calm. I didn't want to give her what she wanted." Naomi placed a supportive hand on his shoulder. "And he did stay calm," she added. "That's what makes me proud. But he shouldn't have to carry himself like an adult just to be treated like a human being." The reporter nodded. "What do you hope comes from this?" Naomi leaned forward slightly. "I hope it makes people look at themselves. I hope it makes someone think twice before making assumptions about a kid just trying to train, to better himself. And I hope gyms, schools, every public space starts asking, who do we make feel unwelcome without even realizing it?" When the interview ended, the producer was silent for a moment. "Thank you," she said softly. "That was powerful." As they left the studio, Naomi's phone buzzed again. It was an email from the National Youth Sports Foundation, inviting her and Jamal to speak at an upcoming summit. Meanwhile, Karen sat in her kitchen with her husband, who was reading the news on his tablet. He finally looked up, his face grim. "They're talking about filing a civil complaint," he said. "Naomi Carter could sue, and if she does, we can't fight it." Karen felt her stomach twist. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just public shame. This could destroy her financially, legally, completely. As Naomi and Jamal drove home from the studio, they passed a billboard with Naomi's old Olympic photo on it. It felt like a sign, a reminder of who she was and the voice she'd always had. "Mom," Jamal said quietly, "do you think this will really change anything?" Naomi looked at him with steady eyes. "It already has." And deep down, Jamal was starting to believe she might be right. By the next morning, the interview Naomi and Jamal had given was everywhere. Clips from the studio were playing on every major network. News anchors spoke over slow-motion shots of Naomi calmly addressing the camera and Jamal's quiet but powerful words. "A viral incident at a suburban gym is sparking national conversations about implicit bias," one anchor said. "Olympic gold medalist Naomi Carter and her son Jamal are now at the forefront of a growing movement." On social media, the reaction was even more intense. People were quoting Jamal's line, "I just wanted to practice. I didn't want to be a story." It resonated deeply. Thousands of comments poured in. "That kid is wise beyond his years. I feel for him. Naomi Carter is a queen. The calm, the strength, everything." We need more conversations like this. Racism isn't just loud. It's in the small, everyday assumptions. Meanwhile, Karen sat in her dimly lit living room, staring blankly at the TV. The same interview was playing there too. She watched herself being described as the racist gym member without a name. But she didn't need one. Everyone already knew who she was. Her phone buzzed with yet another message from the HOA. Karen, due to the overwhelming response from the community, we're requesting that you step down permanently from any leadership roles. She dropped the phone onto the coffee table, her hands trembling. The walls felt like they were closing in. Her husband walked in, holding his own phone. Karen, it's worse now, he said grimly. They've started digging into your old complaints. Someone found the video from the pool incident last summer. It's resurfacing. Karen's stomach twisted. She remembered it all too well. The time she questioned a black family at the neighborhood pool for sneaking in, only to learn they were invited guests of another resident. Back then, the incident had blown over quietly. But now, in the light of this new scandal, it was resurfacing with a vengeance. Online, people were stitching the two videos together, painting a clear pattern of behavior. Same woman, same attitude, different location. She's been doing this for years. Karen buried her face in her hands. She'd always believed she could talk her way out of things, charm her way into control. But now, no one was listening. Across town, Naomi and Jamal sat at their kitchen table, scrolling through the flood of responses. "Mom, look," Jamal said, turning his phone toward her. "This guy says he's a high school coach in Texas. He wrote that what happened to me made him rethink how his team is treated at their gym." Naomi read the message and smiled faintly. That's how it starts. One person at a time. Another notification popped up, this one from the National Youth Sports Foundation confirming their invitation. They wanted Naomi and Jamal to speak at their upcoming forum, where coaches and athletes from across the country would gather to talk about inclusion in youth sports. Jamal hesitated. "Do you think we should go?" Naomi nodded slowly. "Yes, because if we don't use this moment, it will just fade like all the others. This isn't just about us anymore." Meanwhile, at the Crestwood gym, Tyler was overseeing the installation of new posters and digital signs. "All members welcome, zero tolerance for harassment." The gym had released a formal statement condemning Karen's actions, promising new bias training for staff and a review of all membership policies. Members were talking in hushed tones in the lobby. Some said they were proud of how the gym handled it. Others admitted they were embarrassed it had happened there at all. Back in the city, the mayor's office announced a new initiative, a series of community forums on racial bias in public and private spaces. Naomi's name was mentioned as a potential keynote speaker. While Naomi's influence was expanding, Karen's life continued to unravel. That afternoon, she received an email from her employer. "After careful consideration, we are terminating your position effective immediately. We cannot allow this level of public controversy to impact our organization." Karen stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Her hands trembled as she slammed the laptop shut. She wanted to scream, to blame someone else, but deep down she knew this wasn't just one mistake. This was years of entitlement catching up to her. Later that evening, Jamal was shooting hoops at the park near their house. A few neighborhood kids gathered to watch. One of them, a younger boy, approached him shyly. "Hey," the boy said. "I saw your video. I'm sorry that happened to you. It happens to me too sometimes. People tell me I don't belong at my soccer club. But seeing you, I don't know, it made me feel like maybe I can handle it too." Jamal paused, the ball resting in his hands. He didn't know what to say at first, then he nodded. "Yeah, you can handle it. Just don't let them stop you." The boy smiled and ran back to his friends. Naomi watched from a bench nearby. She could see it happening, the ripple effect. Jamal was already becoming a quiet source of strength for others. As they walked home that night, Naomi's phone buzzed with a new email. This time, it wasn't from a journalist. It was from the United States Olympic Committee. "We'd like to invite you and Jamal to a national summit on inclusion in athletics. We believe your story can inspire real change. Please consider." Naomi looked at her son. "It looks like this is going to keep growing," she said softly. Jamal nodded, a small spark of resolve in his eyes. "Then I guess we keep going too." Meanwhile, Karen sat alone in her silent house, the glow of her phone screen showing one last headline that made her stomach drop. "Community demands apology from Karen Hastings. Will she speak up?" She didn't know how to answer. The following day dawned with an unusual stillness. Naomi stood by the kitchen window, sipping her tea as the morning sun filtered through the blinds. She could feel that today was another turning point. Jamal had gone from being a quiet, disciplined teen to a face recognized in households across the country, and the requests for them to speak kept piling up. Her phone buzzed again. Another email. This one was from a well-known civil rights organization. Naomi, we're hosting a televised town hall on racial bias in everyday spaces. We would be honored if you and Jamal would attend. Your story has resonated deeply with families nationwide. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, then set the phone down. She needed to talk to Jamal before committing to anything else. Upstairs, Jamal sat at his desk, staring at the screen of his laptop. He had a dozen tabs open. News articles about the gym incident, social media posts from people he didn't know, and even highlight reels of himself on the basketball court that strangers had dug up to celebrate him. It felt surreal. When Naomi knocked softly on his door, Jamal turned around. "They want us at another event," she said quietly. "This one's a national town hall, but I won't say yes unless you're ready." Jamal hesitated. "It's weird. People I've never met are talking about me like they know me. I didn't ask for any of this." Naomi stepped inside, sitting on the edge of his bed. "I know, but sometimes we don't get to choose the moments that define us. We only get to choose how we respond to them. And you've handled yourself with grace so far. That's why people are listening." Jamal exhaled. "Okay, if it really helps other kids, I'll do it. But only if you're with me." Naomi nodded. "Always." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Karen sat slumped on her couch in sweatpants, her hair unbrushed, scrolling endlessly on her phone. Every headline was worse than the last. Karen Hastings faces fallout after viral racist gym incident. Crestwood HOA officially removes board member after public backlash. Employment terminated for woman in Naomi Carter viral video. She had thought it would blow over in a day or two, but it hadn't. It was getting bigger. Her name was now synonymous with the word Karen in local news. Her phone rang. It was her mother. She hesitated before answering. "Karen, I saw the news." Her mother's voice was sharp. "What were you thinking? Do you realize what you've done to yourself, to this family?" Karen's eyes welled up. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought he didn't belong there." Her mother sighed deeply. "You've always done this, always assuming the worst about people who don't look like you. Now the whole world knows it. You need to fix this. You need to apologize." Karen hung up without replying. She stared at her phone screen. Apologize? To Naomi? To Jamal? The thought made her throat tighten. She wasn't used to admitting she was wrong, but her lawyer had already emailed her that morning, urging her to consider a public apology before things escalated into legal action. Across town, Naomi and Jamal were preparing for the evening community forum. The mayor had personally requested their presence. It would be a smaller, more intimate gathering before the national town hall later that month. When they arrived at the city hall, the crowd was larger than expected. Parents with children, local coaches, community leaders, they were all there. As Naomi and Jamal walked in, a quiet wave of murmurs moved through the room. The mayor stepped onto the stage. "Tonight, we're here because of an incident that could have divided us," she began, "but instead, it's giving us a chance to have honest conversations about who we are as a community." Naomi was invited to speak first. She took the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. "What happened to my son at that gym wasn't just about one woman's ignorance," Naomi said. "It's about a system of assumptions, a culture that teaches people to question who belongs based on skin color. My son went there to train, to chase his dream, and instead he was treated like a trespasser." The room was silent, hanging on every word. Then she looked at Jamal, who stepped up beside her. His voice was quieter, but it carried a quiet strength. "I just wanted to practice," he said simply, "but I also wanted to show that I'm not going to let people like her stop me. I'm still going to train. I'm still going to work for my dream. And I hope other kids don't give up either, no matter what people say about them." The audience erupted in gentle applause. Some even stood. Meanwhile, in her darkened house, Karen watched the live stream of the forum on her laptop. Seeing Jamal speak, not with anger but with calm determination, made something crack inside her. For the first time, she felt shame, real shame. She picked up her phone and started typing a message. It was clumsy, awkward, but it was an apology, or at least the beginning of one. "Naomi, this is Karen Hastings. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I want to apologize. I was wrong. If you're willing, I'd like to meet in person and say it to your face." Her finger hovered over the send button. For a moment, she almost deleted it. But instead, she pressed send. Across town, Naomi's phone buzzed in her purse as she and Jamal stepped off the stage, greeted by community members thanking them for speaking. She hadn't seen the message yet, but the tides were beginning to shift again. The night after the community forum was quiet. Back at home, Naomi sat at the kitchen table, a faint smile on her face. The forum had been emotional but powerful. People had listened, really listened. Parents came up to thank her. Kids hugged Jamal, and even the mayor promised new community programs for youth inclusion. Jamal was upstairs, scrolling through messages from classmates and strangers alike. "Man, that was brave. You spoke for a lot of us. I've been through the same thing. Seeing you talk about it made me feel less alone." He didn't know how to respond to all of it. It felt strange to be admired for simply existing through someone else's ignorance. Downstairs, Naomi finally checked her phone. Among the dozens of unread messages, one stood out. Karen Hastings. Naomi frowned slightly. She opened the message, reading slowly. "Naomi, this is Karen Hastings. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I want to apologize. I was wrong. If you're willing, I'd like to meet in person and say it to your face." Naomi leaned back in her chair. She hadn't expected this, not from Karen. She'd assumed Karen would double down, deny, deflect like so many others had before. She thought about it for a moment. Did she owe Karen the chance to apologize? Did Karen deserve that grace? Meanwhile, across town, Karen sat in her dark living room, staring at her phone. The message had been sent hours ago, but there was no reply. She didn't blame Naomi for staying silent. Why would she respond? Karen sighed heavily. She'd spent the entire day in a haze of shame. Her husband barely spoke to her. Her daughter refused to come out of her room, embarrassed by the fallout at school. Even her own friends had distanced themselves. Most hadn't returned her calls. The truth was, Karen had never really thought about her actions before. She'd lived her life with unchallenged privilege, assuming she was helping or protecting when really she was just feeding her own bias. But now the mirror was being held up, and she hated what she saw. The next morning, Naomi woke early. She sat with her tea, staring at the message on her phone again. She could ignore it. She had every right to. But deep down, she believed in accountability. And sometimes, accountability started with a difficult conversation. She typed a short reply. "Karen, I'm willing to hear you out. But understand this, an apology doesn't erase what happened. We'll meet on my terms." She hit send. Karen saw the reply within seconds. Relief washed over her, but it was mixed with dread. Now she'd have to face Naomi, face Jamal, and admit her wrongdoing in person. Later that day, Naomi and Jamal met with the mayor again to discuss the upcoming national summit. Jamal sat quietly as the mayor explained the plan. It would be broadcast live, with athletes, parents, and community leaders discussing systemic change. Naomi would speak. Jamal could share as much or as little as he wanted. "Are you sure you want to keep doing this?" Naomi asked her son gently as they left the meeting. Jamal nodded. "I think it's bigger than me now. I can handle it." Naomi felt a swell of pride. Meanwhile, Karen prepared herself for the hardest meeting of her life. She put on simple clothes, no polished perfection this time. She didn't want to look like she was trying to defend herself. She rehearsed what she'd say over and over in her head. When the time came, Karen arrived at the small community cafe Naomi had chosen. Naomi was already there, sitting calmly at a table by the window. Jamal sat beside her, silent but watchful. Karen approached slowly. Her voice was quiet. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Naomi's gaze was steady. "You asked for this meeting. Say what you came to say." Karen sat down, her hands trembling. "I was wrong," she began. Her voice cracked slightly. "I made assumptions I shouldn't have. I treated your son like he didn't belong, and there's no excuse for that. I'm sorry for humiliating him. I'm sorry for disrespecting you. And I'm sorry for the pain I caused." Jamal didn't speak. He just watched her carefully. Karen swallowed hard, forcing herself to keep going. "I know my apology won't undo what I did. But I want you to know I'm trying to learn from this. I don't want to be that person anymore." Naomi studied her for a long moment. "You can say you're sorry," she said finally. "But the real apology is what you do next. If you really want to change, you'll have to prove it through your actions, not just your words." Karen nodded quickly. "I will, I promise." Jamal finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You should have thought about that before you treated me like I didn't matter." Karen's eyes welled up. "You're right, I should have." The conversation ended there. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step. When Karen left the cafe, the weight of her mistakes followed her. She knew this wouldn't fix her reputation or undo the damage, but it was the only place to start. Naomi turned to Jamal. "How do you feel?" Jamal shrugged. "I don't know. I guess..." She seemed like she meant it, but it doesn't change what happened. Naomi nodded. "No, it doesn't, but sometimes people can change if they're willing to face the truth. And maybe someone watching all this will think twice before they do the same thing." Outside, the cafe door closed softly behind Karen. Across the city, news of the upcoming national summit was already breaking. Headlines read, "Naomi Carter and son to speak at National Forum on Inclusion after viral incident." The story was far from over. A week later, the buzz surrounding the incident had not faded. It had grown. The National Summit on Inclusion was set for the following weekend, and Naomi had agreed to speak alongside Jamal. In the days leading up to it, reporters continued to call, advocacy groups sent support, and social media threads dissected every detail. But for Jamal, life still had its quiet moments. He kept going to the gym early every morning just like before. Only now, people greeted him differently. A nod of respect from the front desk clerk, a smile from strangers who recognized him. Even the younger kids in the neighborhood would show up to watch him practice, calling him the kid who didn't back down. Still, Jamal felt conflicted. He didn't want to be defined by what Karen had done to him. He wanted to be known for his game, his work ethic, his goals, not just for surviving someone else's bias. One morning after training, he sat on the bleachers tying his shoes when a boy about 12 approached him. "Hey," the boy said nervously. I saw you on TV. I just wanted to say you're cool. My cousin stopped going to the gym after someone made fun of him. But I showed him your video. Now he wants to come back." Jamal blinked, surprised. "Really?" The boy nodded. "Yeah, he said if you can deal with it, he can too." A faint smile tugged at Jamal's lips. "Tell him to keep playing. Don't let anyone stop him." The boy grinned. "I will." As the kid ran off, Naomi walked over, holding her phone. "Coach Reynolds called again," she said. "He wants to talk about mentoring programs for kids who face discrimination in sports. He thinks your story could launch something bigger." Jamal looked thoughtful. "Mom, maybe after the summit. I'm still figuring this out." Naomi nodded. "One step at a time." Meanwhile, across town, Karen was attempting her own first step. She had agreed, reluctantly but sincerely, to volunteer at a local youth center as part of her effort to repair the damage she caused. When she arrived, the staff gave her polite but cold looks. They knew who she was. She spent the morning helping organize sports equipment for the center's after-school program. The kids didn't know her, but the staff kept their distance. Karen felt the weight of every stare, every unspoken judgment. During a break, one of the youth coaches approached her. "You're trying to make amends, huh?" he said flatly. Karen swallowed. "Yes, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try to be better." The coach gave her a long look. "It's not about you feeling better. It's about actually learning, changing. These kids don't need people judging them before they even get a chance." Karen nodded silently. She didn't have any excuses left. Later that day, she walked past a community bulletin board. A large flyer was posted there. National Summit on Inclusion, featuring Naomi Carter and Jamal Carter. A conversation on bias, belonging, and change. Karen stared at it for a moment. She realized she wasn't just up against the opinions of her neighbors. She was now a cautionary tale on a national stage. Back at the Carter home, Naomi and Jamal were preparing for the summit. Jamal was quiet, sitting on the couch with his notes. Naomi watched him carefully. "You don't have to be perfect," she reminded him. "You just have to speak your truth." Jamal nodded slowly. "I just don't want people to see me as a victim. I want them to see that I'm more than what happened to me." "They will," Naomi said softly, "because that's who you are." Meanwhile, the news coverage intensified. Major networks announced live broadcasts of the summit. Civil rights leaders, athletes, and educators were all confirmed to attend. Hashtags trended again. Hashtag Voices of Belonging, hashtag Naomi and Jamal, hashtag Inclusion, starts. Here, the day before the summit, Naomi received another message, this one from the mayor's office. "Naomi, Karen Hastings has reached out to us. She wants to attend the summit and publicly apologize. It's your call whether she's allowed to." Naomi stared at the message for a long moment. Part of her wanted nothing to do with Karen anymore. But another part of her wondered if letting Karen face the community publicly might send an even stronger message. That evening, Naomi brought it up to Jamal. "Karen wants to come to the summit," she said gently. "She says she wants to apologize publicly. What do you think?" Jamal paused, conflicted. Would it even matter? Or would it just be for show? "I don't know," Naomi admitted. "But sometimes when someone owns their mistake in front of everyone, it's not just for them. It's for everyone watching, to see what accountability looks like." Jamal thought for a moment, then finally said, "If she really means it, let her. But I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it for everyone else who's been through this." Naomi nodded. "Then we'll allow it, but on our terms." Across town, Karen sat at her kitchen table, waiting anxiously for a reply from the mayor's office. She didn't know if she'd even be given the chance to face Naomi and Jamal, but she knew she had to try, no matter how uncomfortable it would be. The next morning, the city's largest auditorium was already being prepared for the summit. Rows of chairs were set up, cameras were being installed, reporters were taking their positions, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, three lives, Naomi's, Jamal's, and Karen's, were about to intersect once again, this time under the watchful eyes of the entire nation. The morning of the summit arrived crisp and cool, the city bathed in early sunlight. Outside the Crestwood Civic Auditorium, a small crowd had already gathered. Reporters set up their cameras while community members filed in quietly, some carrying signs that read, "Everyone belongs," and "Bias has no place here." Inside, the air was electric with anticipation. Rows of chairs filled quickly. On one side, local officials and educators took their seats. On the other, parents with children, young athletes in their team jackets, and community leaders murmured softly among themselves. The stage was simple but commanding. A long table, 3 chairs, and a backdrop with the summit's title, "Voices of Belonging, a National Conversation." Naomi and Jamal arrived through a side entrance to avoid the cameras. Jamal looked around the packed auditorium nervously. "This is a lot more people than I thought," he whispered. Naomi placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Just focus on why you're here. You're not here for them. You're here for the kids who feel like you did that day in the gym." Meanwhile, Karen sat in her car parked a block away, gripping the steering wheel tightly. She hadn't yet mustered the courage to walk inside. She could already see the reporters stationed at the main doors. Her stomach churned at the thought of facing the very people she'd wronged. Finally, she stepped out, her movements slow and heavy. She wore no makeup, no carefully curated smile, just a plain blouse and jeans. She wanted, for once, to be real. When Karen entered the auditorium, a ripple of whispers swept through the crowd. People recognized her immediately. She felt every stare like a dagger. She didn't sit near the front, she chose a seat in the back, alone. On stage, the moderator, a respected civil rights leader, stepped to the podium. "Today," he began, "we gather not to point fingers, but to listen, to learn, and to move forward. What happened here in Crestwood is not unique. It is a reflection of the quiet, everyday bias that so many face. But today, we also have a chance to see what accountability and change can look like." The audience listened in silence as Naomi and Jamal were introduced. Naomi stepped up first, her posture steady and graceful. "My son walked into a gym that morning just to train," she began. "He didn't expect to be questioned, humiliated, or treated like an outsider. But that's what happened, and it's what happens to so many kids who look like him. What you saw in that video is only a glimpse of a bigger problem." She paused, scanning the audience. "But here's the thing. Change doesn't start with big speeches or trending hashtags. It starts with moments. Small, uncomfortable moments where you choose to look at your own actions and ask, who am I excluding without even realizing it?" The crowd nodded, some quietly wiping away tears. Then Jamal stepped forward. He held the microphone with both hands, his voice soft but clear. "I didn't want to be on the news. I didn't want people knowing my name because of this. I just wanted to play basketball. But now, I know this isn't just about me. It's about every kid who's been told they don't belong. And I just want to say to them, you do belong. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The audience erupted into gentle applause, some standing. Jamal exhaled, feeling the weight lift slightly from his shoulders. Then, the moderator turned to the crowd. "There's someone here today who has asked to speak. Someone who made a mistake but says she wants to make amends." Karen felt her heart lurch. Slowly she stood. All eyes turned to her as she walked down the aisle toward the stage. Whispers filled the room. Some people glared. Others simply watched, curious. Karen stepped up to the microphone, her voice trembling. "My name is Karen Hastings," she began, her words catching in her throat. "I'm the woman from that video. And I'm here today because I was wrong." A murmur ran through the audience. Karen gripped the podium. "I made assumptions about a boy I didn't know. I treated him like he didn't belong, like he wasn't worthy of the same respect I'd give anyone else. And I want to say in front of all of you that I am deeply sorry. To Jamal, to Naomi, and to everyone who has ever felt unwelcome because of people like me." She glanced at Jamal, her eyes wet. "I can't undo what I did, but I'm committed to changing. I've started volunteering at the youth center. I've enrolled in bias awareness training. I know it won't erase my actions, but I'm willing to put in the work. I don't expect forgiveness, I only ask for the chance to do better." The room was silent. Naomi studied her carefully. She saw a woman stripped of her usual armor, standing there raw and exposed. The moderator spoke. "Accountability begins with admitting harm. Change begins with action. We thank you for coming forward today." Karen stepped back, returning to her seat in the back. Some people nodded at her honesty, others looked away, unwilling to offer sympathy yet. Naomi turned to Jamal. "How do you feel?" she whispered. Jamal shrugged slightly. "I don't know, it doesn't fix anything, but maybe it's a start." The summit ended with a standing ovation for Naomi and Jamal. Civil rights leaders approached them, promising new initiatives for youth programs. Reporters asked for more interviews. And outside the auditorium, cameras captured the crowd leaving with a new sense of purpose. Karen slipped out quietly, unnoticed by most. She didn't feel absolved, but she felt for the first time like she had taken a real step toward change. And for Jamal, as he stood on the steps of the auditorium, surrounded by people who thanked him for his courage, he realized something important. This was bigger than him now, and maybe that was okay. In the days following the summit, the city of Crestwood felt different. Conversations in coffee shops, schools, and even at the gym shifted. People were talking, not just about the viral video anymore, but about what it revealed. Parents discussed how to teach their kids empathy. Coaches reviewed how they treated their athletes. Even the gym announced a new mentorship program for local youth, named in honor of Jamal. Naomi and Jamal's appearance at the summit became one of the most replayed segments on national news. Clips of Jamal saying, "You do belong. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise," were shared everywhere. Youth organizations reposted it. Teachers played it in classrooms. For many, it was a message that resonated beyond the initial incident. Naomi's phone didn't stop buzzing, but now it wasn't just media outlets calling. It was schools, community leaders, and even former Olympic colleagues offering to help create something lasting from this moment. One evening, Naomi sat at the dining table with Jamal, reviewing an email from the National Youth Sports Foundation. "They want to fund a new initiative," she explained, "training programs for kids in underrepresented communities. They want us involved, Jamal. They even want to name it the Belong Project." Jamal looked up, surprised. "They want me?" "Yes," Naomi said with a small smile, "because you're the one who lived it. They believe your voice can reach kids who need it most." Jamal was quiet for a moment. "I guess, if it helps other kids, I'm in. But I still just want to play basketball, Mom." Naomi chuckled softly. "And you will. This doesn't take away your dream. It just adds another purpose to it." Meanwhile, Karen's path toward accountability was slower and more painful. The day after the summit, she received an email from the HOA formally stating that her leadership roles were permanently revoked. Her husband, tired of the constant media attention and community shame, had temporarily moved out to stay with relatives. Karen kept volunteering at the youth center. At first, the staff kept her at arm's length, assigning her simple tasks like organizing supplies. But over time, as they saw her show up day after day, their stance softened slightly. One afternoon, she helped a group of kids clean the basketball court. A little girl looked up at her and said, "Are you the lady from the video?" Karen froze. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "Why were you mean to him?" the girl asked innocently. Karen swallowed the lump in her throat. "Because I didn't understand, and I was wrong. I'm trying to be better now." The girl just nodded and ran off to join her friends. Karen exhaled deeply. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Back at the gym, a new sign hung proudly in the lobby. All are welcome, respect is mandatory. Tyler, the manager, had implemented bias awareness workshops for all staff and even for members who wanted to participate. Attendance was higher than expected. People were beginning to take the conversation seriously. Naomi returned to the gym one morning to find a small crowd of young athletes training together, kids of all backgrounds. They smiled when they saw Jamal walk in. One of them, a boy about his age, approached shyly. "Hey man," the boy said, "I just wanted to say thanks. What you did, it made me feel like I could come back here. I stopped coming after someone told me I didn't look like I belonged. But now, it feels different." Jamal nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "Keep training," he said. "Don't let anyone stop you." Later that week, Naomi and Jamal traveled to the state capitol for a follow-up event with lawmakers and community leaders. They were invited to speak about how policies in public and private spaces could help prevent incidents like the one they experienced. Jamal was nervous again, but this time he knew he wasn't just speaking for himself. "Bias doesn't always shout," Jamal told the room of officials and advocates. "Sometimes it whispers. It's in the looks, the assumptions, the way people question you without reason. I can't change everyone, but I can show that you don't have to let those whispers define you." The room erupted in applause. Karen watched the speech later that night on her laptop. Tears slid down her cheeks as she realized just how deeply she had underestimated the impact of her actions. She picked up her journal and started writing, not excuses but reflections on her own biases, her own patterns. For the first time, she wasn't thinking about how to save face. She was thinking about how to truly change. Weeks later, the story gradually faded from the headlines, but the effects remained. The community saw tangible changes: new youth programs, stricter anti-harassment policies, and open discussions at schools about inclusion and respect. Naomi continued her coaching, now with a new layer of purpose. She was no longer just training athletes to win medals. She was mentoring them to be leaders beyond the track. Jamal kept training, his eyes still on his dream of college basketball. But now he also carried something more: the quiet knowledge that his voice mattered. One evening, as they walked home from the gym, Jamal looked up at the sunset. "Mom," he said softly, "do you think people will really remember all this?" Naomi smiled. "They might not remember every detail, but they'll remember how it made them feel. And if even one person chooses to act differently because of it, then it was worth it." Jamal nodded slowly, feeling a calm sense of closure. He didn't want to be a symbol, but he was okay with being a spark. And somewhere across town, Karen continued her quiet journey of rebuilding. Not for the internet, not for her neighbors, but for herself. Because sometimes the hardest lessons aren't just for the ones who are wronged, they're for the ones who did the wrong. Months passed, and the frenzy around the incident gradually quieted, but its impact remained like ripples on a still pond. Crestwood felt changed. The gym had become a more inclusive space, with mentorship sessions for young athletes and workshops for adults on recognizing bias. Schools began holding regular assemblies on empathy and community values. What started as a painful, humiliating moment for Jamal had turned into a catalyst for broader conversations about belonging. Naomi's life found a new rhythm. She was still coaching, still mentoring, but now her work stretched beyond athletics. She partnered with community leaders to launch the Belong Project, a nationwide initiative providing scholarships and resources for underprivileged youth in sports. Her inbox was filled with stories from parents thanking her for inspiring their children. Jamal kept his focus on basketball. Early mornings at the gym, long afternoons on the court, his dream of playing college ball stayed alive. But something in him had shifted too. When younger kids approached him for advice, he didn't just talk about drills or practice schedules, he talked about resilience, about standing tall even when others tried to make you feel small. One Saturday morning, Naomi and Jamal attended the grand opening of a new youth center that had been built in part due to the awareness sparked by their story. Jamal helped cut the ribbon alongside the mayor. Cameras flashed, but this time it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt purposeful. After the ceremony, a little girl tugged at Jamal's sleeve. She was barely 8 years old, holding a basketball almost half her size. "Are you Jamal?" she asked shyly. "Yeah," he said, kneeling to her level. "My mom showed me your video. She said you were really brave. I want to be like that too." Jamal smiled. "You just have to keep working hard and never let anyone tell you you can't, okay?" The girl nodded enthusiastically before running back to join her friends on the new court. Naomi watched the exchange from a distance, her heart swelling. Jamal was no longer just her son chasing a dream. He had quietly become a role model. Meanwhile, Karen's life had taken a humbler path. She kept volunteering at the youth center even after the initial backlash faded. She stayed out of the spotlight, choosing instead to listen and learn. She attended every bias awareness workshop she could find. Not because she was forced to anymore, but because she wanted to understand. Her relationship with the community was still strained. Some people would never forgive her completely, and she accepted that. But over time, a few began to acknowledge her efforts. She didn't expect redemption, only the chance to do better than she had before. One day, months after the summit, Karen spotted Naomi and Jamal at the youth center during a community event. She hesitated at first, unsure if she should approach. But then she gathered her courage and walked over slowly. Naomi noticed her but didn't flinch. She stood tall, calm as always. "Naomi," Karen said softly, "I just wanted you to know I'm still trying. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know I haven't stopped." Naomi studied her for a long moment before giving a single, measured nod. "Good, keep trying. That's the only way change happens." Karen nodded back, a quiet gratitude in her eyes, then stepped away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was an acknowledgement, and for Karen, that was enough to keep moving forward. Later that evening, Naomi and Jamal sat on their porch, enjoying the warm breeze. Jamal rested a basketball on his lap, spinning it absently. "Mom," he said, "do you think what happened will really last? Like, will it actually make things better long term?" Naomi leaned back in her chair, looking up at the sky. "It won't fix everything, but it planted seeds. Seeds of awareness, of conversation. And sometimes, that's how change begins. Not all at once, but piece by piece." Jamal was quiet for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I guess being a spark isn't so bad." Naomi smiled too. "No, it's not. And you're more than just a spark. You're proof that even in the face of ignorance, dignity wins." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jamal felt lighter. He didn't feel like a victim anymore. He felt like someone who had turned a painful moment into a stepping stone, not just for himself, but for others. Naomi glanced at him, pride shining in her eyes. "You ready for tomorrow's training?" Jamal grinned. "Always." And with that, life moved forward, not as it was before, but as something new, shaped by the lessons learned and the voices that refused to be silenced. What began as one act of prejudice in a gym had become a story of accountability, resilience, and quiet triumph. And though the world would keep moving, the ripples from that day would never fully disappear, because one moment, one spark, had created a fire that could not be ignored.